the inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. I'm Dan Hurley. 10 months ago, everyone assumed that the incumbent, Chris Monzel, had a lock on his seat of Hamilton County Commission. In addition, it didn't seem that any important issue was out there that could either excite voters or be worthy of a campaign to educate voters. As a result, no established Democratic politician could be found to make the race. When political newcomer Sean Patrick Feeney won the party's primary in early May, few people even took note. All that changed suddenly on August the 6th when the three Hamilton County commissioners had to decide whether to place the so-called icon tax to repair Union Terminal and Music Hall on the ballot. When Chris Monzel suddenly put forward a plan for just Union Terminal, not only was the shape of what has now become Issue 8 radically changed, but Chris Monzel stirred a political hornet's nest. Joe Webb reported that day on August the 6th, sets the background for what has become a three-way race for Hamilton County Commissioner.
It was decision day for Hamilton County Commissioners, the deadline to get a sales tax hike on the ballot. An overflow crowd of supporters of the original plan to fix both old buildings did their best. They offered to cut the tax bite by $30 million and cheered a rousing plea over the telephone from new VA Secretary Bob McDonald. But the theater wasn't enough to save Music Hall.
At the end of the day, however, passion and zeal are sometimes trumped by hard realities, and that's dollars and cents and what makes sense for the big picture for our communities.
Monzel proposed a new 5-year plan for only Union Terminal. The original plan for both died for lack of a second. And Commissioner Greg Hartman fell in with the new plan.
But the request of us to include Music Hall in this proposal is a bridge too far for me.
The cheering quickly turned to boos, the boos to a quiet uncertainty. No one's sure if $50 million in tax credits and $30 million in donations lined up for the original plan were part of the new one. Uncertainty turned to anger.
This is certainly a failure and an abdication of leadership. We have no idea what this 5-year plan means. This is something that was thought up just almost overnight, and it will not work.
I spent 3 hours with Commissioner Monzel yesterday explaining to him why this doesn't work. So I'm interested in what enlightenment he had overnight that says this is actually, there's any way to activate this plan.
I hope Union Terminal is a great facility, and I hope we can be repaired. We're not going to stop on Music Hall. We're going to reconvene and try and find Plan B.
The political fallout of that decision was that suddenly established Democratic politicians saw an opening, only to have the door slam when Mr. Feeney refused to step aside. The result is a three-way race with the unusual situation of an established politician running as in a write-in campaign. I am joined this morning by all three candidates. Chris Monzel, the incumbent Republican and current president of the Hamilton County Commission, is completing his first term. Mr. Monzel spent 9 years on Cincinnati City Council. Professionally, he is an engineering manager for GE Repair Technology Center of Excellence. Sean Patrick Feeney is the Democratic endorsed candidate for the commission. Mr. Feeney graduated from Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology, is currently studying for his MBA at Wright State. He has served on a task force in North College Hill, where he lives. And Jim Tarbell, who is running as an official write-in candidate. Mr. Tarbell has been involved in the community for decades and served 9 years on Cincinnati City Council. Welcome, everybody, to Newsmakers.
Thank you.
Chris, recently, Christian Sigmund, the county administrator, has begun, not just begun, has defined how this proposed tax for Union Terminal, what is now Issue 8, if it passes, how it's going to be carried out, public-private partnership. What do you think of that? How do you feel about that? We're getting down to brass tacks about how this is going to work. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's a really great and an exciting opportunity for protecting the county taxpayers, taking the lessons learned from the stadiums deal, where the taxpayers were on the hook for any cost overruns, for any shortfalls in the sales tax receipts. By using this public-private partnership with the Cincinnati Museum Center they are going to be the ones that are going to be on the hook for any lack of sales tax coming in or for any potential cost overruns. So truly, this partnership is going to protect the taxpayers of Hamilton County, which I think is a really exciting opportunity for us to take.
On the other side of that, what role will the county have in terms of supervising the letting of contracts, the fulfillment of contracts, whatever?
So we will still have a contract with the Cincinnati Museum Center, which will have terms in it, such as reporting back on a periodic basis. It could be either quarterly or monthly, how often we want it to do, and then at the same time making sure that they're only going to get the money that's coming in from the sales tax. So they're not going to get any more. They're just going to get what we bring in from that quarter-cent sales tax. So that's going to be the mechanism that we keep tabs on this project to make sure that it's done. And I think with what's being laid out from the Culture Facilities Task Force that they will be able to get it done on time and on budget.
Sean, how do you feel about both what has become Issue 8 and what has become the plan for implementing Issue 8?
So I believe it would have been a much better plan to let the county taxpayer decide on their own whether they want to support both Music Hall and Union Terminal. I'm impressed that we were able to get a 14-year tax down to 5 years, but I believe it would only take a little bit over 5.5 years to fund the original plan that would have fixed both Music Hall and Union Terminal. So if we can do it in 5 years, why didn't we just go ahead, put it on for maybe 6 years, and we could have fixed both icons at the same time instead of having to go back to taxpayers at some unknown point in the future in order to fix Music Hall.
What about the practical implementation plan that Christian Sigmund has worked out?
So I'm all for public-private partnerships. In fact, there was a great partnership that was proposed when we were going to fix both Music Hall and Union Terminal. A lot of philanthropic donations were hinged on both of those getting fixed. Unfortunately, we've endangered a lot of that partnership by dropping Music Hall from the initiative.
Jim, what do you think of where we stand right now with this?
It's a little confusing. I mean, as of yesterday's NCAR, which is the last news report I read.
And we're taping on Friday morning, so you're referencing Thursday.
I'm sorry, yeah, Thursday's NCAR was confusing. And the whole thing's been confusing since my biggest criticism is that the commissioners waited so long to define anything, except that they were reluctant. But to wait that long, to wait till the last hour, the 11th hour, to make any kind of decision that people could hang their hats on and still not sure is just not acceptable. And piggybacking on what Mr. Feeney said about not allowing people to vote on it, what is wrong with that? Let's put the D back in democracy. Do we know that much more than the public knows? I don't think so. I think that we made a serious error in not allowing the public to vote.
So let's, I guess, be clear on the whole intent of this. And that was from the property tax that Hamilton County property owners have been paying for the last 10 years to support Cincinnati Museum Center at Union Terminal. That tax was going to expire this year.
It is expiring.
It is.
No
It will
matter what
expire. In
happens.
fact, property taxes are going to go down for folks because of that expiring. So we had to make a decision of what we're going to do. Do we want to extend that property tax, or do we want to do something different? So our tax levy review committee came forward and said, you need to figure out 3 questions. 1, do you want to fix Union Terminal? Because if you do, it's going to cost. 2, do you want to do something differently? And then 3, who's going to own it? Right now, Union Terminal is owned by the city of Cincinnati. And so what we were forced with was talking about Union Terminal and what we want to do with that. In this process, Music Hall got added in, which to me, I always felt Music Hall had a plan in place. When I was on Cincinnati City Council, we were offered time and time again funding from the Nippert Foundation to go forward and fix Music Hall.
But we know what's happened to that.
Right, exactly. The city never came forward to figure out a way to get it done. And then
offended.
So they lost that, and then they entered into an agreement with 3CDC to go fund it just last year. So to me, Music Hall was always something that was going to happen because they were already trying to do something. For us, the answer and the question was, what are we going to do with Union Terminal?
I guess the question for me that's somewhat confusing, I don't want to go back to August 6th and spend too much time on that, why not put this on the ballot? People can vote against it. So both what Sean and Jim have said. Why not just put it out there and let people decide one way or the other? The property tax is going down one way or the other. The quarter-cent sales tax gets paid not only by Hamilton County residents, but by other people who come into the county and do business and buy things. So why not just trust the voter?
First, this was all about Union Terminal. That was the question to begin with. Secondly, from what we were hearing, Music Hall could have impacted and possibly made that levy fail. So now all of a sudden you have something that we're supposed to focus on, which is Union Terminal, possibly being damaged because of now have a Music Hall add to it. Why not we get a clear answer from the voters of Hamilton County about Union Terminal, up or down? Should we save it or not?
Here's a question that I have, and I don't know, but I'm going to put it out. You're seeing some damage that the viewers just saw damage inside City Hall. It gets shown every time.
Union Terminal.
Union Terminal, thank you. Union Terminal that we use over and over again. I worked for Union Terminal. I worked for the Museum Center. I was a vice president for 4 years. That isn't because of failure to fix things in the last few years. That was never fixed back when it was redone in the late 80s, early 90s. And one of the fears I have is there enough money here to actually now in this present configuration to do the job right? Because otherwise, if there's not, we end up in the same place that we ended up before, where there was $100 million of work to be done and they only had 42. And so they did 42 million, and yet the building is crumbling around them. So, Jim, what do you think? Does this plan as it exists now, can it really do the job that people want?
Well, I have to assume the due diligence that the committee that was formed to save it in the first place, which consists of the most powerful civic leaders in the city. One of my concerns with this whole thing is that they spent the better part of a year. It's the most noteworthy committee of civic leaders that I can remember being assembled for anything in decades. And to not assume that they've done their homework, I think, is a slap in the face. I assume that they have. I have to. They run Procter & Gamble, and they run Macy's, and they run Kroger. All that experience doesn't amount to anything in terms of the credibility of this committee and their due diligence. I have to assume that we're on solid ground as far as that's concerned. I keep coming back in my own head to how this was put together and the inability of the commissioners to negotiate the bigger picture. And that, for me, has always been the challenge here. We've got arts and culture institutions and other icons throughout the county that are at risk. We do not have a support system in place for more than a few months down the road. And this was an opportunity to look at that bigger picture and use that talent that was at the table with the business community and the civic leaders and get something more out of it.
Sean, what do you think is the implications of having assembled a committee like that, then rejected their recommendations? What's the implications for calling upon those kinds of leaders in the future by government?
So here's my concern. This is actually now a referendum on Union Terminal. What happens if this gets voted down? I don't think you're going to see an initiative on the ballot anytime soon if it gets voted down for us to actually repair Union Terminal. And because of that, these business leaders that we brought to the table are going to be very hesitant to volunteer for any government service in the future because here they spent nearly a year coming up with a plan just to have it dismissed by the Republican majority on the commission. They're not going to step up in the future, and we really need to appreciate our business community for stepping up, and we want to ask them in the future to step up again.
Chris, you said that you supported issue 8. Mm-hmm. Do you still stand there?
Yes, yes.
What about on the other issues that are out there right now, issues 6, 7, the countywide issues? Do you support those?
Yes, absolutely. Both for the Family Services Treatment Levy as well as for the Health and Hospital Levy.
But you've always been opposed to any increase in taxes. The issue 8 it's a new tax.
Yes.
So how do you justify that?
Well, from the position of a historic landmark of Union Terminal, of what value it brings to our community. It has over 1.2 million visitors a year, and just the revenue that it seems, to me, it's something that should be saved, and that's what I believe in. And utilizing the Cultural Facilities Task Force report is actually how we're funding this. We are going to have enough money in there based on their calculations of what they've given to us, and we are truly grateful for the great work that they've done for Union Terminal. To me, it's something that we're embracing and utilizing to come up with a plan that will restore it for generations to come.
The whole question of all of these taxes, besides the general fund that exists in the county budget, let both of you comment on this. I'm assuming, I don't know, I shouldn't assume, whether you support 6, 7, 8 or not. Clarify that. And then secondly, the approach for the past number of years has been to hold all of those at level. They only allow renewals, which mean because of inflation you have to cut services in order to make that happen. But what do you think of that policy in terms of the way we handle funding, human services, and lots of other things?
So I support all three initiatives, but I think we are coming to a point where we can't just keep putting new initiatives on the ballot because we are taxing citizens enough as it is. In fact, when Monzel was elected to the county commission, he promised no new taxes, and yet 2 years ago our property taxes went up to cover the bad stadium deal. A balanced budget is important, it's legally important, but I don't think we should do that by raising taxes.
What do we do? Do we default?
Ideally, no, we should not default, but we need to look at services and we need to actually hold the various county government departments accountable. So in Monzel's first year, the prosecutor's office, for example, was $500,000 over budget. This past year, while he was president of the commission, they were $6 million over budget. So if we have somebody who's actually full-time holding the departments under them accountable for sticking the budget, we won't have to go back to taxpayers all the time and say, hey, we ran over budget, we need more money.
I'm going to come back to you on that one.
All right,
but Jim?
I mean, costs go up, you know. Every time you turn around, something's going up, and taxes don't go up.
Okay.
Commensurate with the cost of living. It's a reality. It's not truthful to say that you can't or don't raise taxes when the cost of living goes up.
Okay, I have gone way over on this segment. I have to take a break, but I will give you a chance to respond.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Stay tuned. After the break, we'll continue this discussion. Welcome back. We are focused this morning on the race for Hamilton County Commission. I am joined by the current Commissioner, Chris Monzel, a Republican who is seeking his second 4-year term, Sean Patrick Feeney, a Democrat who is making his first run for public office, and Jim Tarbell, who is running as an independent and as a write-in candidate. Mr. Feeney made some charges about you weren't supervising, particularly departments in general, but especially the prosecutor's office. What do you say about that?
Well, the prosecutor's office, by Ohio Revised Code, they can run over their budget as long as they need money to operate. Same with some of the courts as well.
What are the implications of that for the general budget? Because I don't think most people understand that.
Yeah, so by law, they can come in and say, we want an extra $500,000, we want an extra $1 million, and we have to give it to them because of the Ohio Revised Code and because they have to operate. So therefore, to have a balanced budget, which is also required by Ohio Revised Code, we have to cut in other areas. Or we have increases in revenue, which we have seen over the past several years as our sales tax revenue has been increasing, and thus we're able to balance out. We're actually carrying a balance of about 13% carryover, which is more than what it's been in the previous year. So we have done a lot of cost cutting at the county. We have decreased our general fund budget over $70 million, and it's really, we're really working hard to make sure. The one budget that department he talked about that said $6 million over was actually the sheriff's department, and that is one area that we have to focus on. But the sheriff has been audited by the state in regards to how he's running the jail and other findings that we have to take care of as well, because we just want to make sure we're operating in the best manner possible.
Sean, when this whole thing happened with the icons tax, there was an effort to ask you to step aside, or some would say push you off the ballot, depending on how one looks at it. You didn't. Have you undercut your ability to be a viable candidate in the future inside the Democratic Party by doing that?
Absolutely not. What this enables me to do is to have a platform to actually communicate the issues that Hamilton County taxpayers, Hamilton County citizens have, and I believe I represent the average Hamilton County citizen. We're overburdened and we need to step up and unite and actually work towards change in government, and the only way we're going to be able to do that is by running one of our own.
Okay, but every candidate says essentially the same thing, and when push comes to shove, there are placeholders on the ballot, and sometimes by stepping aside, you gain brownie points for doing something down the...
I don't think that's how American government should work. I don't think we should have placeholders on either side of the ballot. It doesn't make sense when somebody runs a primary, they win 60% of the vote, 10,000 people. This is what the Hamilton County citizens want, and I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure I help those citizens.
Jim, you're a write-in candidate. First off, how do you write in on the Hamilton County ballot? And I won't even ask you if it's possible.
It's not that complicated. I mean, if you look at the ballot, there's a section there that's very clear and evident about Hamilton County Commission race. And there are two people whose names are listed.
Your name will not appear on the ballot.
Will not appear on the ballot. And there's a little box there, like there is for every position, every name. And you've got to fill in that box. It's just that little box. And then there's a line for write-in. So you write in Tarbell. You could theoretically write in T. It's anything that I claim that the other candidates can't claim. Nobody else has a T in their name. Technically, that would be acceptable. We're saying Tarbell.
Yeah.
And that's all you need. So you write in Tarbell.
And you're an official write-in candidate.
Yes.
So you will get counted.
Right.
I could go write my name in, but they're not going to count my name.
Right. Yeah, Captain Marvel and Wonder Woman aren't going to be counted. But I think it's important to be clear. I'm not at this age and this amount of experience looking for trouble. I felt that this was important for me and my record, my experience and my institutional memory to step in. I didn't see it represented in this race. Mr. Feeney was quoted by the leaders of the Democratic Party as saying that he would step aside if somebody of greater credibility politically came forward. And would you do it, Mr. Tarbell? I said, absolutely. I was so fired up by that time with this whole business about how we do business that I couldn't wait to get in. I wasn't going to go in initially because of personal reasons, but under the circumstances, I thought I needed to jump in. So I said, yes, I would do it. They went back to Mr. Feeney, I'm quoting them, and Mr. Feeney said, I don't think Tarbell can raise enough money. I'm not going to step aside. I've raised $60,000 in 6 weeks. How much have you raised, Mr. Feeney? And that's the reason why I decided to get in. But it's really more than anything else, it's my background of service. When you see what's going on right now with the inability to make deals, to look at the bigger picture, that's where I come in.
Okay. Just to little time we have left, there's also the general fund that's now being out there on the table. Christian Sigmund, the administrator, has proposed a 1/4-cent sales tax as a way of funding the ongoing needs and pointing out that people from outside the county also pay that sales tax. What's your view of that approach to this next budget?
So we just had our first public hearing this week. We have a couple more coming up. From the standpoint of the proposition of doing a tax swap, of changing a property tax for a sales tax, it's an intriguing concept, but I don't agree with doing it at this time. I don't think what we need to do, especially with the museum center tax going forward before the voters in 2 weeks, if that gets turned down, then I'm sure people aren't going to vote for a sales tax in May's ballot for funding the general budget of the county. So for me, I think we need to keep going forward as we have, keeping our departments working with us to have a balanced budget.
Sean?
So I think we need to ask the citizens of Hamilton County, what do they think about that tax swap? I think historically we've not asked citizens enough for their input, and this is one of those really important issues that we need to spend time, actually study it, and let citizens give their input before our leaders make choices.
So you would like to see that go to the ballot rather than just having the commissioners make that decision?
Correct.
So it wouldn't impact this budget?
Well, it would actually, because it will part of it. So because we collected in October of next year.
All right. Jim, what do you think about this approach?
Well, I think we're at the point where we've got to bring other people in. We have made these decisions way too much in isolation, I think, in the last so many years. And if we don't broaden the base of interest and support in issues like this, I think we're just crazy.
Okay. Thank you very much. We're out of time. I have a million other questions, but we're not going to be able to get to them. To learn more about each of these candidates, pull up their websites at chrismonzel.com, feeneyforoffice.com, votetarbell.com. They're all out there, lots of position statements, and it's much better to read those. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Next Sunday, we conclude our campaign coverage with the Ohio Senate race that pits Charlie Winburn against Cecil Thomas. Have a good week.